Who knows what Jay-Z, J.K. Rowling, Bill Gates and Oprah Winfrey all have in common? Okay, I will tell you then. They have all overcome failure in one shape or form to go on to gain success in their respective careers. Welcome to My Perfect Failure. Join us as we delve into the world of our perfect failures. We will interview, explore, and discuss how our perfect failures can lead us to success. Join us and tune in.
Welcome everybody to another episode of My Perfect Failure. Today we have another fantastic guest. So today's guest, as a 12-year-old, a teacher had the class take a very basic aptitude test. The results were goals. Our guest today, a professional trumpet player, an audio engineer, a TV director, and a pilot. Achieving all those goals by the age of 30, he continued beyond those goals, becoming a CEO, a writer, a lecturer, an author. He is also a husband, father, and grandfather. Goals are important, and believing in your dreams sets the stage. Actively gaining the knowledge, skills, and experience brings those goals into reach. Hard work, effort, and never giving up makes them a reality. So, warm welcome to My Perfect Failure, Fred Ashman. How are you, Fred?
I'm terrific. I'm very happy to be joining you this morning.
Well, I'm delighted to have you on My Perfect Failure. We spoke before, as I try and do to most of my guests, and after our little chat, it was going to be a brief chat, but it was a long chat. But it was really inspiring. So it was a great conversation to have with you. So I'm excited to have you on the podcast today, and for everybody else who's not familiar with Fred to become familiar with Fred. And yes, so this episode is about goals. Goals are important, and I think I guess either we have goals or we don't have goals, or we have good goals or we have bad goals. And I don't think everybody is very versed in goals and how to execute and do it well, including me to a degree. So that's why I'm excited. One of the reasons I'm excited to have you on the show today. So this is around never giving up on your goals. And your goal started quite early as a 12-year-old. So I'll be interested to talk about having setting goals as a 12-year-old. So maybe we can start with that, Fred, if that makes sense to you.
Certainly. I was like every other 12-year-old. It's what do you want to be when you grow up? And in my case, it was all the things you mentioned. I really wanted to. I had started playing trumpet in the third grade. I thought I might be a pretty good trumpet player. I always wanted to be an audio engineer, which goes right back into the music. And the TV director thing was also something I was really excited about possibility to do. And my uncle had a company airplane that he flew, and when I was about 9 or 10, he let me sit in the cockpit of it. And my dad then had to take me out to the airport and watch the airplanes come and go. So I always wanted to be a pilot. And then turns out that uh, when the teacher did her little aptitude test, as they called it, I came up with all those things that I wanted to do. And uh, and it was written down. And then I never thought about them again. But I wrote them down, and they were somehow imprinted in the back of my mind. And somewhere in my late teen years, early college years, my mom found them and showed them to me again. And by that time, I had already been playing professionally from the age of 16 as a trumpet player. I'd been doing recording for high school bands through a company that did that. They hired me as a teenager to help do that, recording these bands. And then, so I was starting to do the recording engineer thing, which I would do more of it later, and ended up mixing sound live for uh, every major rock group of the late 60s and early 70s through a big company. So those were live audio engineer jobs and helped pay for things. But by that time, I was also playing professionally as a trumpet player, had my own band at Disneyland. We opened one concert for Stevie Wonder and had a lot of fun, different casuals
Wow.
and concerts and things. That was happening by the time I was 19 years old. At the age of 18, I went into a junior achievement program because I also used to hang out at the TV station and get to know the guys and just watch them. And they would let you if you were nice and asked them. My parents early on had to drive me there. And then later, when I got a driver's license, I could drive. And so they had this junior achievement program. It's sponsored by companies, and the TV station sponsored a group. And we put on a television show, a live music show, kind of like the old Dick Clark dance kinds of shows of the 70s and 80s. And I got to direct it. So my first directing a live television show with multiple cameras uh, on a broadcast station on a major network, which was the local affiliate here in our area, was at the age of 18. Uh, that was all a start towards what would eventually become the career. And when I was in LA playing, horn a lot, I also really started the production company of one person with one client, and started my career that way at the same time. So all those things turned out to be goals that I had set when I was 12, but I was always reminded of them because I think it was in the back of my brain, but I just always wanted to do all those things. And I had uh, parents who had a very strong work ethic, and it's a work hard, play hard ethic. And if you're going to do something, do it right. And those things were ingrained. And it all worked out. And the path was never something I plotted out and figured, well, I'm going to do this, then I'm going to do that. It was gain all the skills you can in all the fields that are relevant to what you do, and then see where it goes. And money was never the object. It was creating, making good things happen. That was my objective. And so don't, get confused between objectives and goals, strategic versus tactical, because a lot of things you just can't plan. Somebody told me a very funny thing one time, said, if you want to hear a cosmic laugh, tell God your plans, because they're probably not going to go the way you think. And this is where it really plays very well into your theme about the failures. You learn a heck of a lot more from screwing something up than you do from doing it right all the time. Doing it right all the time is a great goal. And as a professional, failure is not really an option. But how good it is a relative term. So the idea that you are flexible and you take advantage of the opportunities that are given to you, and there's opportunities all around, but you can also look for them and there's a lot of people I see opportunities go flying by and they don't respond properly. They could have recognized and taken the opportunity, but they choose not to. That is a choice. And I had one situation where an employee who I highly valued left the company and did it in a very not so nice way, that he took several clients, major league clients, with him, and lied to me about what he was doing. And so I had actually helped him do it, but unknowingly. But that was a failure on my part to recognize what was going on. But on the other hand, if that hadn't happened, he would have been the one to direct a special event for a charity that we did. And instead, I directed it and got to meet the president of Coca-Cola North America. And I was able to parlay that. This is years later. My production company's really rocking and doing well at this time. And I was able to parlay that into getting Coca-Cola to do a sponsorship for me for a feature film that I did in the millions of dollars. And through that, I simultaneously, because he was the first one in with cash, I was able to raise the rest of the funds through sponsorships from Walmart, MasterCard, and McDonald's and American Airlines. And McDonald's actually dropped out the last second. The day that they were signing the contract, uh, a new president came in and fired all the VPs and canceled all their projects that he had approved. So that went away. McDonald's went away, and I was short um, a seven-figure number. And somebody I'd done some other work for came through and matched funds and paid for all the rest. A billionaire named H. Ross Perot, who's passed away now.
I remember him. He was an independent candidate for your presidency, wasn't he?
Yes, he was a long
Some
time
years
ago.
ago.
Yeah, very interesting guy.
Yeah.
But all of those things, it was relationships, but it's also your track record and your reputation.
Mm.
And the one thing that I learned from all of this is having integrity, which simply means do the right thing when you don't have to. That builds your reputation and your brand as much as anything, and be consistent. Some of the opportunities that people miss, and I've had people that I've called them, they've been in touch with me along the years and wanted to do some work with me. I call them and I've got a job that's urgent. I need somebody, and I'm going to need somebody to say yes. And it might be a week or 2 weeks away, but I've got to get somebody booked. And they don't answer their phone, and they don't call me back for 2-3 days. And it's not because they're out of town, or it's not during a holiday. Boom, somebody else gets the gig. And that's a missed opportunity. So figuring out, even when you're just a sole proprietor, how to get every single call and answer every single email and not get that messed up is really important. And if you're starting to make money at all, one of the best investments you can do is not just an answering machine, but an answering service. Or if you can get an assistant and you have an office to answer your phones, even if you're working remotely, you can set that up. But the whole point is that you need to have that phone answered, and when it's urgent, get it right away. I have a great example of that. One of the airlines, American Airlines, was my client for 36 years in a row for all their biggest work. This is not the little videos you see on the airplanes. They had an internal video department that was almost as big as our whole company. This is the big stuff. The major meetings, the major management meetings, the president's conferences for all of his employees throughout the world. At the time, the big travel agent shows that they used to do, which were live events, but incorporating video and such. And so they would turn out to be a huge client. And we had created this show called Welcome to San Diego. And the guy called on a Thursday, and he wanted to come in on Saturday and see it, because they were going to be doing a big show in San Diego, and they wanted to kick it off with a San Diego show. So the guy flew in, and he looked at it, and he turned to his colleague who flew in with him and said, "We have a problem here." And I'm going, "Oh, darn, they're not going to use my show," because they give me a small fee to run it. It was on multiple big screens. And they said, no, the problem is not your show, it's ours. We had it produced in New York, and yours is way better. So I looked at theirs, and it really wasn't very good. So they turned to me and said, "What would you charge to do this show for us it's about introducing our transcon service to California, new transcon service." And I had to come up with a number right off the top of my head. I didn't have a clue, so I picked a high number. I was all ready to tell them a number. And then I said, "They just had this done from a New York company that always charges 5 times more than I do." So I said, "I'll do it for whatever you paid the other guys, but I'll include original music." No, I didn't do the original music at that time. I said, I'll do it for whatever they did, but I'll have a lot of new photography and cinematography around the state involved in it. I'll do the whole thing. And they said, okay. They gave me the number. I was pretty pleased with it. It was a lot more than I would have asked for. after it was all done, uh, they called me and said, or he saw me, met me afterwards, and said, "Hey, what would you have done it for?" And I told him the number. He said, "Wow, that's pretty good price." And I said, "What would you have paid?" He says, "Double what we paid you."
Really?
Yes. And then I had another situation where I got a call on a Friday afternoon. I was in an edit session. I was left word with my receptionist. We had a staff of anywhere between 10 or 12 up to 30 people full time. And so my assistant came in and then interrupted the edit session, which I had a big thing about don't do that unless it's really important. And he said, it's, or she said, it's Mike Gunn from American Airlines, who's the senior vice president of marketing. And he said, Fred, we've got a problem down here in Dallas. I need you to get on a plane, come down here immediately to help us with it. It led to my first IMAX uh, project.
Wow.
So my first IMAX film, and it was being available to take the call right then. And I used to have a go bag packed to jump on an airplane and go to wherever I needed to go immediately. At one point, I had for Rockwell International, they called me and they wanted me to go to London. I flew to London, had a 2-hour meeting that they had to have in person for some reason. We didn't have quite the technologies that we do like Zoom today. And then caught the next flight back to the States. Those are the kind of things
It's
you have to do.
incredible.
Pick up.
Yeah.
You have to pick up You have to pick up and go and react immediately when it's important.
Yeah.
There's times when you can't, but other times you can.
Yeah.
And my clients were all over the country, and we worked all over the world. So you just had to be prepared to respond and be there.
Yeah, totally. So something around time, and obviously you're a pilot, and we spoke previously around how that helps you with time because you're able to hot foot it from home, make sure that you have the wonderful family life, but also do your work. Can you sort of expand a little bit around how that's helped you over the years?
Yes. When one of my first airline clients was Western Airlines, who are now part of Delta Airlines, and they were a almost nationwide carrier, and they flew to Hawaii and such, jets and all that, the bigger aircraft. But they were based in Los Angeles, and I'm based in San Diego, which is a 2 to 3 hour drive or a 30-minute flight. So I started learning to fly while they were my client. And what I did was I would get my instructor, and I started out in both single engine and twin engine. And I was learned to fly flying into Los Angeles International, which is kind of like learning to fly and going into Heathrow frequently. Uh, but we would actually pull up into the Western Airlines hangar. I would go upstairs. My instructor would stay with the plane. I would go upstairs, do my business with the vice president, come back out, and would fly home. He would do air work and instruction with me on all aspects of the flight. So with 6 hours of total time, as a young student pilot, I was flying in and out of Los Angeles International Airport. And it was a great experience, but that parlayed into, it was a time machine. I could still live in San Diego with my family because I never really wanted to live in the megalopolis of Los Angeles if I could help it, and be able to commute up to do my work in studios up there. And I could fly into Burbank and they would, because I'd buy fuel from them when I'm there, I would give me what's called a crew car, a free car to use for 3, 4, 5 hours. And I would go do my work in the studio, come back, jump in the airplane at Burbank. And all the studios were within 10, 15 blocks of the airport. I could then fly back home and be home in time for dinner. And that would save us, like on a Friday afternoon, it could be a 5 or 6 hour drive. I'd be home in 45 minutes to an hour.
Yeah, that's incredible. And people lose so much time traveling, far shorter distances. Like in the UK, obviously we've got a pandemic at the moment, but under normal circumstances, it could be traffic on the roads, it can be buses, it can be tubes, and it's kind of time that particularly when you're busy, you always think, well, I could be doing something else, whether it be with a family or whether it be work stuff. So to have that, to be able to fly, condense that time and do other things is just extraordinary. There must have been people very jealous of you at the time who maybe had to do those round trips by car.
Probably. Oh, I know there were.
Yeah.
Some of them told me, says, "Hey, if you're going, can I ride with you?" I said, "If your schedule fits mine, heck yes, no
Oh,
problem."
that would have been brilliant. That would have been brilliant. Something that I wanted to touch upon, because we spoke about LA a lot, is a little bit about Hollywood. Because I know early on in your career, I think you had an opportunity with, I think it was NBC. Do correct me if I'm wrong, but it was something that you didn't take them up on their offer, and most people of your age at the time would have snapped their hand off. So, do you mind expanding on that a little bit?
Yes, I was in my early 20s, and we had done some work. My band had been signed by a record company that was run by the brother of a man named Nick Vanoff. And Nick was a very big time producer and did a lot of work with ABC, all the networks. And he kind of let me have run of the place at his shows, including the Hollywood Palace and the Sonny and Cher show. This is in the
Wow.
70s. And so when I came up with a concept for a new Christmas special, I went to Nick with it because he's got all the connections that could open the doors. He says, I'm busy. He was doing a whole new series that he was starting. He says, but I'll get you set up and I'll get you a William Morris agent and love what you're doing. And I've seen some of your work. You're a great young guy. You can do this. So he set me up and I took the concept, which was fully vetted, and we had a number of stars of that era signed onto the contract, onto the project if we could sell it. And we took it to CBS and ABC, and they both passed. They said these kind of Christmas specials we do ourselves in house. NBC was pretty interested, and the reason I even created it was a counter to what I considered the just awful shows that they would put on, that were a bunch of people who couldn't do much music very well, and once in a while they'd have a singer in it, but it's really lame comedy and a Christmas special that's not very good. And so I pitched them on this other one. I came in with original music and everything really pretty well ready to go, including some magic, both physical magic and electronic magic that they hadn't seen before. Because I was working with people in LA who were inventing some of the new stuff at the time, new electronics for editing and for special effects. So I had all this in this package, and the guy at NBC really liked it. And he said, "Hey, kid, I'll give you 20 grand for the concept." And I was making about 20,000 a year at the time. And I said, "Well, okay, let's do it. Of course, I'm going to direct it." And he says, "No, you're too young for that, kid." I said, "Well, I would be part of the production team." No, you're too young for that, kid. I said, "I already brought in the whole concept and everything ready to go."
Hmm.
And he says, "Look, if you want a job, I'll get you a job as a page." That's like a low-end gopher at the studio, escorting visitors. And it was so insulting to me. And even my agent raised his eyes and said, "What? You got to be kidding." And the guy said, "No, I don't want you. I want this idea." And I said, "Well, what are you going to do with it?" He said, "Oh, we're going to change it. We're going to throw in some comedy. I'm going to take out all the singers you have." And they were big names at the time, and put in some other people, actors and such that we have under contract. We have to give them something. So I'll put them in this. I said, "Well, they don't sing." "Oh, they kind of sing. It's okay. We'll fix it." And I said, "So you're going to take this concept that you really, really like, gut it, and
Hmm.
turn it into the same piece of crap that you do
Yeah.
every year?" And he said, "Yeah, pretty much." And I said, "I would rather this never be produced than to give it to you and have you screw it up.
Hmm.
So no, I don't want your money." And my agent said, "You're sure there's money on the table and it could be yours?" And I said, "No." And as we're walking out, my agent, a guy named Sam Haskell, who went on to become the head of TV for William Morris years later, he turned to me and he said, "Fred, I've never seen that in Hollywood before." And I said, "What's that?" He said, "Integrity."
So that's interesting story on a number of levels. One, that you said earlier that your mum installed integrity into you as a young boy. Clearly, that stuck with you.
Yes, and my dad at the same time. It was the deal was you never ever lie.
Mm.
You can tell us anything. There might be some consequences, but they will never be as bad as if you lie about it.
Yeah, and also, being a youngster, being a young man at that time, and somebody presents you with a not a golden goose, but a lot of money, and to be able, because a lot of people would just take it. I don't know. I don't know a number or a percentage, but a lot of people will. But it just showed that if you've got integrity and you really believe in what you do, your art, then money doesn't equate to it. And you did mention earlier actually that you didn't do it. Everything you do isn't money isn't the objective.
No, you have to go find money, and you always want to work in this business if you can with OPM, other people's money.
Yeah.
But you do have to be able to budget accordingly, and you have to make a profit on every show, and every show must be successful. If you have a large budget or a small budget, it doesn't matter. And it's really, there's so many lessons that you learn in life along the way. And one of them was from a trumpet teacher I had, even quite young, but when I was just starting to play professionally and get paid for it all the time, at the age of 16, he told me, he said, and I'm still taking lessons, and you never stop learning, but he told me, even if you're playing Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, you play it like a pro. Whatever you do, you take it up to that level and you maintain that level of quality. A big budget production, a small production, a nothing music gig, or a really important one. It doesn't matter. You always have to give it 100%. And that's kind of important, as well as to, there's some people, oh, this is just a small thing. It doesn't matter. We'll cut some corners and such. And you do have to cut some corners to make budget sometimes. But I feel like if you have a very small budget and you still have to achieve a certain level of professionalism, it means you have to be more clever. It
Okay.
means you have to be smarter. You have to use the skills you have, to make it better. And that applies across the board. If you're inventing a new product, but it's so expensive that it can't be sold and you have to cut it back, or you have development money that's only so far, you have to be really careful where you spend it.
Mm.
So it's at the right places. It's all those decisions in
Yeah.
every profession that get you there. And the goal is to be, the go-to guy or gal,
Mm.
man or woman, doesn't matter. Are you the person that can be trusted to deliver what somebody else needs done, and do it in such a way as it makes it easy for them? I had some people on my staff who used to put them in charge of a project. We'd get the project, and I'd approve things along the way, but there were way too many projects for just one person to do, and we had a very good team. But I would admonish them when they would go into a client and say, well, here's 3 different choices for the voiceover. Which one do you want us to do? And that's, to me, and I use the analogy, that's like you going to your doctor, or your doctor coming to you and saying, I have 3 different scalpels I could use. Which one do you think I should use? I'm paying you to know.
Okay.
They're paying us to know that. We come in and say, this is who we think should do this because it's the right sound. It can be as simple as that. It's the right tone. It's the right
Yeah.
person for this project. But every time you keep going to the client with these questions, you're trying to share the blame if something goes wrong.
Yeah.
Step up, make a decision, follow through on it, and make it work. That's how we were able to do as much as we did and grow so fast, because we were consistent. And when we brought new people in, even some younger people that were kind of green to the business, we were real careful about that. I never had free help, even from interns, no free internships. We would pay them minimum wage, but we'd pay them.
Mm.
And they, after 6 months, if they hadn't advanced and really proven themselves, they went away. But even when we brought somebody new in and they were staying, and it would be giving them some pretty big responsibilities, we would say, you may not fail, because if you fail, you could actually kill this entire client of ours that's millions of dollars. So you're not allowed to fail. And the only reason that you're not going to fail is that you're going to, every time you have a question or you're not sure what to do, you're going to come and ask one of us.
Okay.
And we just had, and then we had to supervise and make sure they did come and ask. But it's just a matter of following common sense rules.
Mm.
But so often we get caught up in the emotions of things, and common sense goes by the wayside in too many situations. And that can, a little thing can really mess you up. I had one guy who ended up having an alcohol problem, and he almost cost me the American Airlines account.
Really?
Yeah. I paid for his rehab, and then he relapsed, and I had to fire him.
Okay. So there must have been some challenges, failures along the way. How did you respond when those situations arose? What was sort of the default?
Well, when 9/11 was a good example. Every single piece of work that we had was, every project was canceled, and many of them multi-million or $1 million jobs that come up once a year were not happening. So I ended up having to sell my home to save the company in that. And for what people are going through with COVID today, I'm glad I'm not in business, because it's worse, because it's really, really tough.
COVID is worse today, you're saying?
I think so, because it's with the airline and the situation at the time of 9/11, we could see where it was going to come back.
Mm.
Right now, we do, because of the vaccines coming out, see that it's coming back, and it will, but it's a long haul, and there's a lot of companies who aren't going to make it.
Yeah. Tough times. We mentioned sort of goals and how goals started early for you. And as your career developed, were goals something that you always positioned into your sort of process?
No.
Okay.
That may be surprising, but no, I never really positioned them in. I had goals all the time. We'd have a goal for the year. We'd have all these smaller goals, but those big overarching goals, they were just sort of planted in the back of my head.
Mm.
And I knew that I always wanted to do a whatever it was.
Yeah.
A feature film. I finally got to do that. I kind of dreamed about doing an IMAX film, but I never pursued the opportunity, and it fell right into my lap. That was that crazy call that I got, because they had the company that does the most and the biggest IMAX films in the world had been hired by American Airlines to do the signature film for their new museum. And they were only halfway through. Well, they were, I guess, still in the rough cut stages, no original music or anything done. And they showed it to the chairman and all the senior staff at American. And the chairman of the board said, all stop. And he turned to the head of marketing, who had not been involved in this. It was a different department. Somehow it got moved over into human resources or something like that with the museum, selection of and the instructions given to the other producers. But the chairman said, all stop. He asked the producers to leave the room. He turned to the VP of marketing and said, get Fred in here and get this fixed. Now, I'd never done one, and in that format. I'd done a lot of award-winning videos and such in the past, a lot of them for American. But and what the other company had done was they wrote a script for a 10-year-old, like a museum film typical museum film, as opposed to something that would really inspire and touch the heart, which is what I had done with a lot of things. And so anyway, I got that opportunity, and I took the call at the last minute, flew down there, and it was, you're going to do it. And how much will it cost? Well, I didn't know how to, price out and spend all the time on a computer for the cost of IMAX versus regular production. I know how to do the regular production. So I said, whatever these guys charged, because they were very expensive. They also had kind of stepped in it in that they had not finished the project. They had used up all the money, and they wanted to double the budget in order to finish the film. And they were also months late, and it was delaying the opening of the theater. So they had made a couple of big mistakes, but at the same time, it was just having the trust, which is the most important thing you can have and the easiest thing to lose, the trust of the senior people to, if I needed to get it done and get it done right, I was the go-to guy.
Yeah.
And that's why they stayed with me in spite of all the competition in this industry, huge competition from all over the world, for 36 years in a row for their biggest projects.
Which is incredible.
We had several clients that were that way. We generally speaking, if we got a new client, we could keep them 5 to 15 to 20, 25 years if they didn't have major changes of management where the new person comes in and just blows everybody away and says, I'm bringing in all new people. And that happens. Yeah. And you can't control that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I used to tell my people frequently, a small business is never more than 90 days away from bankruptcy.
Yeah. That's what we've seen in this pandemic.
Yeah.
I've heard that stat banded around, that most companies have about 3 months worth of finance to cover 3 months. And if you get things that turn around in 3 months, then things get a bit sticky.
Yes, absolutely true.
Yeah. Well, I was going to ask you around goals again, and you sort of mentioned sort of dreaming and so forth. So I'm just thinking about people that are listening to this right now, and if they've got, like a goal, something that in their gut feels like they should do, is, do you have advice for them? Is dreaming part of it? It obviously played parts in your success and some of the things that you've done. What would your sort of advice be to those guys?
I would say that write down the overarching goal, the big stuff that you want to do. For me as a little kid, it was, I wanted to be a pilot. Well, you can get real specific about that. I want to be an airline pilot and so on and so forth. But just, you want to be a pilot, keep it broad enough so that you have lots of choices along the way. And you can still achieve your goal, but not so narrow a goal that it's hard to achieve.
Okay.
For example, a kid who wants to be a professional soccer player. Well, how many professional soccer players are there in the world versus the people playing soccer who want to be? What are your chances of actually making that? And if you're really dedicated and you're talented and you put in the work, you can probably get there. But you need to look at your goal is, if it's to be a soccer player, you might be also very happy doing something else and playing amateur soccer, and which will last you a lot longer and is a lot more chance of success. And I don't want to dissuade those who want to be the pro football, basketball, whatever player they are, because there's a place for that. But I like to say I'm just a mere mortal, and some of the super high-end stuff where it's extremely rare to have success at it may not be the goal. Well, for me, I was flying at a professional level. I've got almost 5,000 hours multi-engine instrument. I've owned 4 airplanes. I've flown all over the place. Flown co-pilot on Learjet missions. Lots of air-to-air photography work, helicopters. I don't fly helicopters. That's like crazy.
Why do you say that?
Well, I've taken some lessons and I was able to fly it, but hovering makes the mortal mortal.
Okay.
I brought it into a hover, and the instructor said, he knows that I'm going to lose control of this machine in about 5 seconds,
Okay.
because
Okay.
it's typical of fixed wing pilots. Learning to
Mm,
hover is the hardest part.
mm,
So I would bring it in, and I'd start to lose it, and he'd take the stick, and within 1 second, he's got it stable. And he says, okay, take it now. And I'd hold it. It's, 4 or 5 seconds, I'm okay. And then I'm starting to lose it again. You're just out of sync with it. And it was so funny. And I just said, I don't think I'm going to be a helicopter pilot, because I don't have the time to spend the 14 hours of training just to learn how to hover, and then spend the money on how much helicopters cost per hour to fly, which are enormous. But
yeah.
it was fun, and
Yeah.
I learned from it about what to ask and not ask of a helicopter pilot when I'm a director on a set. What is safe? What is pushing that envelope? And being a pilot really opened up a lot of aviation work for me, because I could speak the language. I understand the not only the lingo, but the safety protocols. I know how to work on the ramp at an airport safely and talk on the radios. And believe me, the controllers can tell in 2 seconds whether you're aviation savvy or an amateur. So having the lingo and the ability to communicate in those areas, and to communicate to management in aviation terms, really opened the door, because I ended up working for a whole lot of airlines for their production
Yeah.
work, and also for Learjet, and for Dassault Falcon, doing videos for them, Cessna Citation Jets, from all these different companies, because I had an additional skill. And there's a real lesson in that for anybody in production area or any area of your business. If you have a strong hobby that you're really good at,
Yeah.
maybe it's soccer. You might have something to do with the soccer industry, or fashion, or art, or whatever your other skills are. The same thing has happened with me with music. It's been enormously helpful, because I left being a professional and really became full-time producer, director, and writer. But I always kept close with the music, and the music ended up being the heart and soul of a lot of my productions. Uh, it's how I could get a really, with a good story, get that emotional response from an audience without spending the kind of money that the feature film guys did.
Yeah. That's you kind of led into my next question, which was going to be around, should we do what is important that we to do something that we love? And clearly music is close to your heart. It was close to your heart from a teenager playing a trumpet, and to be able to bring that musical side into your work must have been a huge sort of pleasure.
It has been, and I've worked with some great composers and great musicians, and I still am. And it's the music is kind of the heart and soul, and it's also a language that crosses all barriers, and it is something that heals us rather than divides us.
Yeah.
uh, Music is. And for example, right now, I got so tired of during lockdowns, I was playing in some amateur and semi-pro bands. Uh, we call them rehearsal bands. It's for free, and we get together and play. And all those are canceled. I was playing in a college jazz band where they let older guys like me in, and the whole thing was shut down. And not being able to play, I'm semi-retired, and my main hobby is music. Got me going, and so I called up, found a museum who would give us a space, and they put us under an education program, and I could put together a rehearsal band and do a concert for them. So I started calling my pro friends to find other musicians who wanted to do that, and we had COVID procedures and such. We're still going through them, and all the pros that I called said, no, we won't give you any referrals. We want to play. So I've ended up with this professional 18-piece band playing really good charts. And In the other bands, I could play occasionally first, second, third, or fourth, whatever part. In this band, I'm playing fourth because we got real pros in there, which is great. So we're able to do these things, but it just what touches your soul and makes you feel good when you do something positive, and then for me, it's reaching an audience with positive messaging, and that messaging in this case is music.
Yeah. And is that available? So that's during COVID you've been doing this, or you did
It's
it
right. It's right now. We have a
right now?
rehearsal on Tuesday night next week and the following week, and then on the December 13th, we're having a drive-in concert.
Okay. Will that be recorded at all?
Yes, the local TV station is going to cover it, and we are also recording it with sound company uh, correctly miking it and doing all that. And it turns out that the guy that I partnered with to bring this to fruition has run a couple of those rehearsal bands that I played in, and he bowed out, and I'm the conductor now, and I'm running it.
Okay, wonderful. So I guess the reason I'm asking a lot of questions around it is because would I be able to see that? Would the listeners be able to get access to that?
Uh, Probably so afterwards, and I can reach you after we get this done because I'm not sure how it's going to be put out. It'd probably end up on YouTube or something.
Okay, perfect. Potentially, depending on scheduling, this might be to put it on the show notes.
Oh, that'd be gret.
Yeah, I'd love to.
We'll talk later about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I definitely want to see that and share that. That would be fantastic from my point of
Paul, there's two things I'd like to share that just came to mind.
view. Okay.
One was I was on the board of directors of the San Diego Air and Space Museum, and they're a Smithsonian affiliate, which is also learning from some very brilliant people. But I was at a luncheon meeting, and I sat beside a guy who is he's on the Smithsonian in DC, Washington, DC. He was on their board, and at the time he was 90 years old, and he was still flying. He was flying an aerobatic airplane, and he was flying a Citation jet. He was obviously quite well to do, but he said, well, when I fly the Citation jet, they make me bring a co-pilot now. But he's still out there flying a Pitts Special for fun. And I said, well, what advice would you give somebody like myself, and I was in my 40s at the time, or anybody else about achieving your goals? He says, do it now. Don't put it off. Don't wait. You want to do something, do it.
Yes.
He says, too many people put it off, and you never do it. So like with this band thing, I've conducted shows and with 50-piece orchestras and recording sessions and such in the past, but it was just fun. Okay, I'll do this, I'll do that, because I want to make music. I want to please an audience. I want to have fun, and I will do what it takes to get it done. And it's not tomorrow or next week. It's now.
Yeah, totally. And I think I can relate to that. Do it now. It hasn't been something that I've actually executed. So
when I wrote my book, and we all are capable and often do this, I turned procrastination into an art form.
Really?
Oh yeah, it took me 3 years, and it was something I'd never done before. I was out of my comfort zone in writing a book. I'd write scripts all day, but a book's a different kind of deal. And to sit back and try to figure out that can you write something that is going to help and that the audience is going to spend some money to look at, and when they get done, hopefully say, this helped me. I'm glad I read this. I'm glad I bought this book. So that's the kind of thing that you have to do on whatever you do. You are creating something, you're doing something that it's not, if it's just for you, it's a hobby. If it's to fulfill a need that makes others appreciate and willing to pay for what you've done, then it's a vocation and it's a career.
Okay, wonderful. I wanted to I've just written a note down on my paper, my bit of paper I've got here, and it was your book. So I want to delve into that a little bit. So if you can maybe tell myself and the listeners a little bit around the book. I believe it's Advocate for the Audience. So can you expand on that a little bit?
Yes, Advocate for the Audience uses my experiences in the production business, but is applicable to almost any business. And it's a lot of common sense things. And you read it and you go, yeah, I get that. I should do that. Then other things, I think there's a lot of people who've read it, and professionals and younger people coming up who said, oh, I never thought about it quite that way. And that's the idea of it, is to, with real life situations of both successes and failures, of what we learned along the way. Lessons learned are all the way through it, and it's not an instruction book, but it can be taken that way. And we've gotten some real good reviews on it. I did not put it on Amazon or any place else out there because they want to. It's 300 some pages. It's got a lot of color illustrations and pictures in it, but they wanted to sell it for $60-$70 and pay me about $2 a copy, and I'm selling it for like $25 US,
Okay.
plus shipping, and I'm just doing it myself. And when I speak, I sell some copies. It's not, I didn't do it to make money. I did it to to write a book that would be successful and help people.
Yeah.
And it seems to do that. And the test of anything like that is, what do people say about it, and what uh, do they read it, and does it apply?
Absolutely. And also, I guess that there's lots of lessons that can be applied in a book. And I think is, the idea that we can learn lessons and put those lessons into whatever project that we're working on, and to save us from making mistakes. Because why do we want to make mistakes when if there's resources out there or content out there that help us avoid that?
Well, a couple of the pros who have read the book got back to me, and I have a couple of quotes. Advocate for the Audience is one of those rare books with literally has gold on every page. He's taken a lifetime of insider information, tips, and production tricks, compiled it into a series of stories that are not only entertaining, but also teach exactly what is necessary to be successful as a creative entrepreneur. With several hundred lessons learned, this book is a fast track to understanding how to take your business to an entirely new level. Then someone else wrote, Advocate for the Audience is a must read for anyone working with clients and who have an audience. And if you're reading this, that's you. And then the final one was, this is from a working producer director out there right now who's already working as a pro. This book deals directly with issues encountered in the film production industry, with actual interesting and extremely relevant examples to help the reader find solutions to the multiple film production problems existing today. Great read. And then after about a month later, he actually emailed me and said, I've been using a lot of the things that you put in your book, and I've had amazing success, and my company's growing.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That's first class endorsement. It must have been quite interesting for you to actually I'll just mention for listeners what I'll do, Fred. I'll put a link to your book in the show notes so people can get access to that directly. And if people want
Thank
to
you.
purchase, then they can go right ahead and do that. But what I was about to say is it must have been incredibly interesting for you to put all your thoughts down on paper. And actually,
It took so long because I was trying to figure out uh, what would be relevant and what is just fun stories,
yeah,
and what would really be relevant to people.
yeah. And also what was a consideration about how people can extract the information in layman's terms and put it into whatever their career is, because we've all got clients, regardless of what sector. And generally, we would all have clients. So it's making it sort of user easy
We
to
all have
implement.
we all have an audience as well.
Yeah,
Audiences can be an audience of one or two. One of the most important audiences we created a project for was an audience of 3 people, and it
really.
was $100 million project on the line.
Wow.
And I did another job for a pharmaceutical company, and it was what direction to take with this drug that they discovered had amazing side effects that were so positive that it saved lives when it was used in a different way than it was invented for, and how to market that. And they were going all around on everything for that. And a good friend of mine who's a consultant called me in, and we did a whole lot of videos of the reactions of doctors and people to the different ways of looking at this drug. And every time they went in and said, well, this reduces cardiovascular risk in this disease by 95%. So you have a 95% less chance of dying from this than you would otherwise. And they just couldn't get that through until we edited 32 hours of video into 5 minutes.
Wow. Sorry, say that again.
32 hours of video into 5 minutes.
Jeez, how long did that take to do that?
A long time.
Wow.
It took a lot of time, and I did that during my retirement. It was just a fun project for a friend, and it ended up making a major change, and it was fun to do. I'd never done anything quite like that before.
That's incredible. That's incredible. So, Fred, we're getting towards the end now. So I've got a couple of questions, if I can ask you.
Absolutely.
So a recurring question I always ask every guest is, if you could invite 3 inspirational people for dinner, who would you invite?
Walt Disney.
Okay.
Probably Thomas Edison.
Okay.
And my wife.
Fabulous. Fabulous. I know she's been very important in your career and everything else. So,
well, she's been quite a good influence in that she's tolerated me first and all my travels and everything else, because it gets real time consuming. There'll be times when I think it's 2 p.m. and it's 8 o'clock at night. I'm still in here and I'm totally oblivious to the rest of the world when I'm in the middle of a project. That kind of, because I'm loving it. I'm having fun. Yeah. It don't bother me. The only difference between men and boys is the price and the size of all their toys. Mm-hmm. We just get into it, and that goes for women too. If you love it and you're really into it, it becomes totally consuming and inspirational. And she has been my rock through all of this and provides perspective. She really helped on the book because I was doing a lot of the right behaviors management wise, but I had no idea of how and why behind it. They write books on how to do this and how to do that. And I'd never thought about it in any of those terms. I just did what I thought was the natural thing. And I made more right decisions than wrong ones. That's kind of the goal, isn't it? Make more right ones than wrong ones. So she has been so good about that. But she's also a published author, and she's got 2 master's degrees. And she's a very smart lady. So your partner in life, whoever that is very important, and because you can lean on each other when you need to. Mm. And there's a lot of cliches about that, but it's absolutely true. Very few of us are totally solo people. And it's important to keep your personal life balanced with your business life. And those like myself who tend to just get totally immersed, it's easy to forget about those things unless you have somebody kind of remind you once in a while, sometimes with a ball-peen hammer to the head. But but that's not to hurt. That's just to get your attention.
That's the way she phrases it. I just need your attention for a second. But that's wonderful. She's obviously an expert in her field as well. So it's great that she was able to combine and work closely for the book, which I will be getting, and I will let you know what I think once I've read it. I think it could be quite important to me. So,
and the listeners can find me at fredashman.com, FredAshman.com.
Okay, that was my next question, and so you've already answered it. So thank you very much. So Fred, thank you so much. This has been a delight. Really, really enjoyed having you on the podcast, and definitely want to keep in touch with you and maybe look at maybe future episodes, because there's so much content, so much you've done. So
I want to see if you and how you jump to your next step, because your story is pretty fascinating too, and I can't wait to hear what happens next.
Well, I'll keep you posted on that. And the conversation we had previously was quite inspiring to me, and that I've been thinking lots around that since then. So definitely need to progress and move this forward. And this episode can potentially be something that I, along with your book, something that I listen to and read to help me execute what I want to execute. So thank you so much. And thank you, listeners, for tuning in to My Perfect Failure. And you can catch me at www.myperfectfailure.com, and Twitter is failure_perfect, and Insta is padsmpf. And I look forward to seeing you on the next episode of My Perfect Failure. Take care, everybody. Bye.
Thanks for listening to My Perfect Failure podcast. Be sure to visit www.myperfectfailure.com to join the conversation. Subscribe to our podcast on iTunes or Google Play. Look out for our next episode.